Hello everyone. So for today we're going to talk about some bacteria. As always, there's a set of notes for you to copy down. Pause the video whenever you need to, go back, anything you need to do to make sure those Google Doc notes are filled out. So when we talk about bacteria, we need to classify them, and we do that by putting them into two groups. We have archaebacteria and just bacteria. Archaebacteria are bacteria that like to live in very extreme conditions, like halophiles, which means they live in really, really salty lakes where nothing else really can survive. Regular bacteria, they have thicker cell walls than our archaebacteria, and examples could be things that you might have heard before: E. coli, S. aureus. The E dot and the S dot stand for like the genus of the species. So kind of like a dog is Canis familiaris, it's just written as like C. familiaris. So E. coli is Escherichia, weird word, but E. coli. Alright, and we don't know as much about bacteria, so the main way we classify our bacteria is by their shape. So we have three shapes of bacteria. We have a coccus shape, which is a little circle. You might have heard of this one, Staphylococcus, or a staph infection. Here's an actual picture of Staphylococcus aureus, also would be written as S. aureus. Now, S. aureus is a pretty common infection in like hospitals, but staph infections can be very serious if untreated. So coccus just means round. Next shape would be rod-shaped or bacillus. Bacillus just means rod or pill-shaped. So this is Bacillus anthracis, which is also just called anthrax, right? Anthrax was a big thing years ago where they were worried about people sending this deadly bacteria in the mail because it could be powderized and put in like letters, and people were worried about opening a letter and breathing in the anthrax, which is deadly. It's not much a concern anymore. But this is a picture of actual Bacillus anthracis, which is just anthrax. The color is a dye, obviously, just to make it pop a little bit. I think it looks pretty cool. Last but not least, shape-wise, is the spirillum. So spirillum is just curlicute, spiral-shaped. So spirillum lives up to its name with this little shape. And here's a picture of a common spirillum, syphilis, which is a transmitted virus through close contact, let's say. But this spirillum just means the shape of spiral. We classify dogs and cats not just on their shape, but also on a whole bunch of characteristics. What makes a dog different than a cat? But with bacteria, it's really just on shape. Is it a rod? Is it a spiral? Is it a circle? And then we just kind of go from there. Not very sophisticated, but I mean, it's what we got. So almost all small organisms need some form of movement. And in order to do that, they have to have a tail. There's also other ways they can't move, but the flagella is the biggest one. So a flagella is a whip-like tail that just spins around and helps them move. So flagella just means a whip-like tail. So here's like a diagram of like a long flagella. You might have, when we did the lab where we looked at the euglena in the pond water, you might have been able to see their little flagellas as they swam around. Swam. Not a word. Anyway. So how do these things reproduce? Well, the main way they reproduce is through this thing called binary fission. Binary means two. Fission means to cut. So binary fission is asexual, meaning it doesn't involve a partner. They just get large, cut themselves in half, now they're two. Those two can get large, cut themselves in half, now there's four. So that's part of the reason bacteria can reproduce so quickly. It's because they just cut themselves in half. They don't have to, meet each other, go on dates. But one way then they share DNA and they're not all clones is through this thing called recombination. So a combination, a different mixing. So conjugation is what bacteria can do, where a thing, it's literally called a sex pilus, connects the two bacteria. And they exchange these small circles of DNA called plasmids. So they can still share DNA between each other, but instead of a mom and a dad bacteria making a baby bacteria that's mixed, it's just two adult bacteria swapping DNA. That way, when they do fission and cut themselves in half, their new DNA has been mixed. They can mix their DNA throughout their life cycle, which is not a common trait. So why are prokaryotes important? Why do we need bacteria? Well, they are decomposers, which is very important. They take that material, and we talked about this in ecology, where they take that material from dead and decaying organisms and put it back into the ecosystem. They are producers. They make oxygen, which we like to breathe, but also they're nitrogen fixers. If you remember, we talked about the cycles. Bacteria are important in certain steps of the cycles where they fix nitrogen in a way that plants can use from atmospheric nitrogen that really no one can use. Without that key step, we would stop an entire cycle. All those things they do that are good, some prokaryotes, some bacteria do things that are bad. For example, bacteria can cause diseases. Like anything that causes a disease, we'll just call a pathogen. So a pathogen is a disease-causing agent. Examples: Lyme disease and strep throat. Strep throat is from Streptococcus pneumonia, and Lyme disease is from Borrelia burgdorferi. So these bacteria cause these diseases. So for all the good they do some harm as well. Now, prevention. So sometimes we can prevent diseases through a vaccine. Although most vaccines focus on viruses, you can have a weakened or killed pathogen injected into your body. If your body fights off something that can't fight back, it'll most likely win because it's fighting against a weakened opponent. Your body then remembers, oh, this is how I fight against this opponent. Then if you were to ever see it again, your body would have a natural immunity towards it. Doesn't mean you're 100% immune. No. It means you understand that battle strategy on how to fight back against whatever you're talking about, whatever pathogen the vaccine is trying to prevent. So it produces an immunity, not a bulletproof immunity, but it produces a strong immunity towards whatever pathogen it's against. We can also treat bacteria with antibiotics. You cannot treat a virus with an antibiotic because anti means against, biotic means living. So it's an anti-life pill. It only works against things that are living, which viruses are not. So this would block the growth and reproduction of pathogens. It doesn't hurt you because it attacks the cell wall. You don't have a cell wall, therefore you're fine. If you were to crush up an antibiotic and put it on a plant, you kill the plant. But since you're not a plant, you're not a bacteria, you don't have a cell wall, it won't hurt you. Examples of common antibiotics are like penicillin, tetracycline. Those are some pretty strong antibiotics. So these are the short little bacteria notes. Make sure that your notes are filled out before you submit it. And as always, send me an email if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.